My story begins 15 years ago, when I started my work as a wildlife ecologist back in my home country, Brazil. At that time, I was an undergrad student in biological science, and I asked one of my best professors at uni to join his research team. It was when I had the opportunity to know the northern Wariki, the largest species of monkey of the Americas. I think Warikis are quite special, and we humans may have a lot to learn from them. Well, with exception of physical distancing in times of pandemic. But I'm talking about the fact that Warikis are considered the most peaceful species of monkeys. Differently from other neotropical primates, Warikis live in an egalitarian society, which means that all individuals, males and females, are the same. There is no hierarchy. Aggressive behavior is something quite rare, as well as competition for food of females. The sad thing about the Wariki is the fact that they are on the verge of extinction, mostly because of habitat loss and hunting. Today, there are few populations remaining in nature, and all of them together do not surpass 1,000 individuals. At that time, my professors had a research project in the Caratinga Reserve, a protected area of 900 hectares located in the Atlantic rainforest, southeastern Brazil. 900 hectares correspond to roughly 900 rugby fields. You may think, oh, that's big, that's reasonable, but in terms of wildlife conservation, that's not enough at all. A fragment of forest of this size, surrounded by crop fields and pastures, is like an island for these monkeys that live mainly on the trees. Although the Wariki is still persisting there, they are quite isolated. At that time, I realized that animals and plants in these situations could be vanished by one infectious disease or one catastrophe like a fire. And like the northern Wariki, there are many species facing extinction in the world. The good side about the story of the Wariki is that there is an amazing effort to preserve these species, especially in the Caratinga Reserve, where wildlife ecologists have been monitoring these monkeys 7 days per week for more than 3 decades. And much of what we know about the species ecology and behavior come from studies conducted in the Caratinga Reserve. Besides all the hard work of these ecologists to preserve Warikis and its habitats, also benefits other species in the Brazilian Atlantic rainforest. As wildlife ecologists, we study the interactions between wild animals, plants, and their habitats. We also quantify and assess threats to wildlife and what can drive them to extinction. Today, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about some challenges wildlife ecologists like me have been facing and why we need your help. So after finishing my undergrad and my master's, I started working with environmental impact assessment to see, for example, how the construction of roads, hydroelectric power plants, and other developments affect fauna and flora. And I did that for a couple of years until I decided to come to Australia to do a PhD in ecology. Today, as a PhD candidate, I study how fire affects species of mammals. Before coming to Australia, I was pretty excited, As a wildlife ecologist, specialist in mammals like me, Australia is like a paradise. Koalas, kangaroos, wombats, possums, gliders, all these animals that you cannot find anywhere else on this planet. Yet, Australia has the worst rate of mammal extinction in the world. More than 10% of its original mammal fauna have become extinct since European settlement, and currently, almost 30% of all species are threatened with extinction. When I was a child, I would picture extinction in my mind by thinking of things like meteors and dinosaurs, but extinction in the contemporary world is a much closer reality. The ongoing process of environmental degradation, things like logging, pollution, land clearing, that leads to habitat loss, is a threat for many species in many countries. Apart from habitat loss, wildlife face several other threats worldwide, like hunting, illegal trade, fire, and exotic species like cats and foxes. And on top of that, there is climate change. The thing is, all these threats can operate at the same time or be exacerbated by each other. For example, ecosystems affected by habitat loss are more vulnerable to fire and exotic species. And climate change is expected to increase the frequency and intensity of catastrophes, like the massive bushfires that we saw last summer in Australia. Although we know that species can disappear as a result of natural processes, all these threats together are leading to extinction rates without precedents. Recently, I have been analyzing some data on extinction risks for several groups. And even though I was aware of the significant biodiversity loss we are experiencing, looking at the actual numbers is quite scary. For example, data from the International Union for the Conservation of Nature shows that currently 18% of all vertebrates are threatened with extinction in the world. This includes fishes, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. Some groups are even more in danger. 4 out of 10 species of amphibians are at risk of disappearing. Amongst invertebrates like insects and plants, the figures look quite scary. This is because we know much less about these groups. For example, we know that 40% of all species of plants are threatened with extinction. However, the extinction risk has been evaluated for only 10% of the existing species of plants in the earth. That means that we have probably more species facing extinctions than we can estimate, and what is more, we are likely losing biodiversity that we even don't know yet. Because we are surrounded by so much uncertainty in terms of how many species we know and how many of them are facing extinction, protecting and recovering natural habitats is the best way to prevent that so many species disappear. By doing this, we are protecting even what we don't know yet. Besides, the benefits of protecting natural habitats go far beyond preventing species from disappearing. This is because natural ecosystems provide a huge number of priceless services, such as clean air, water, pollination for crops, medicines, erosion control, prevention of floods, everything essential to our life, well-being, and economy. So, throughout my career, I learned how to describe and quantify threats to wildlife, write papers and reports. This is crucial for understanding what drives species to extinction and what modifies our ecosystems. And we actually use this technical information to inform decision makers and people that are responsible for managing the environment. But I can say that this is just one part of what we need right now. As I said before, the rate of extinction is going much faster. We have several threats operating together, and we are probably losing biodiversity that we even don't know yet. Despite all those depressing facts, I realize that there is hope and there are opportunities. So the good thing is that you don't need to be a wildlife ecologist to help us. There are many other things you can do. For example, you can start with connecting with nature. Know your stuff. So people care about something they know they can relate to. Get to know the ecosystem surrounding you and the species that live there. For example, here in Australia, you'll see this massive and fascinating evolution lab just surrounding us. You have representatives of very old lineages such as the echidna and platypus that helped us to understand how mammals evolved and dominated all types of environment. And come on, you can see a kangaroo every day, but it's a kangaroo. How exciting is this? You have possums walking around at night and many birds flying in the park close to you. I know this idea might be biased. As a wildlife ecologist, someone who loves nature, but I can assure you that there are many other benefits of connection with nature. Scientists have already confirmed that the contact with nature can reduce stress, fatigue, and bring happiness. It's amazing how much energy a 30-minute bushwalk can replenish. Well, if you are already convinced by what I just said and are wondering how you could engage even more, you can start with very simple things. For example, increase your knowledge about environmental issues, wildlife extinction, climate change, and then discuss this with your family and friends. You can also look for volunteering in your city council or other organizations close to you and help people out with reforestation projects, weed control, cleaning coastlines. And that is actually a great opportunity to meet new people and to make friends. Or you can join a citizen science project in your local area and help scientists to find and catalog species of orchids, frogs, reptiles. If you live close to the bush, you can start in your backyard by controlling weeds and using native plants for landscaping. It is also important that you keep your pets, like cats and dogs, inside the property. Needless to say, indigenous communities are the best custodians of the land. They have a deep and innate connection with nature, and they have been living in these ecosystems and managing these ecosystems for so many generations that they have a deep understanding of the ecosystem dynamics and the species. And this knowledge is really valuable for decision making and for management actions. We must protect and support our local traditional communities. And thinking globally, we need to do our best to not support companies that, as far as we know, have their profits based on things like environmental degradation, people's exploitation, and wildlife illegal trade. And lastly, but not least important, we need to choose politicians that first understand what is going on in our planet and second, are committed to do something about it. After all, we need effective policies and regulation to reduce greenhouse emissions and environmental degradation. And please, do not think that your single individual action cannot make difference, because that is not true. Do what is possible for you. That is already a huge help to the whole thing. We need to take action right now and shape a different story on this planet.